How are you doing today?
Good. We're doing really good.
Excellent.
We're wondering,
Go ahead.
trying to trying to clear these pop-ups off the screen so we can see you better. All right, there we go. So we're wondering if you would talk us through the Capstone Character Project. Um,
Absolutely. So, the purpose of the Capstone Project is really twofold. Number one, our goal at Money Vehicle, and one of my goals as the founder, has always been asking the question of how do we make this class interesting to you as a student? And I remember being in school. I remember being Jedediah of today. There are very few things in this world that are more interesting to me as an individual than myself. So I thought if there was a way that we could take this class and make it about the student's journey and really focusing in on not a subject matter that they're learning, but something that you are going to use in your life and really personalizing each action of the program. So we really wanted to see that character project become yourself today or a future version of yourself, but really making it about how you take all the lessons and apply it. That brings me to my second point of the project is we're moving beyond education into application. We're really starting to look at and say, banking, that's a great topic. Credit, good topic. But what are you going to go do with these subjects? We wanted to be able to internalize and now look at and say, I'm not just learning about a credit card. I, as my character, went and opened this credit card. I asked it these questions, and I found that these values were why this character and this individual for me is going to go and choose that card. And the hope and the goal, Mr. Martin, is to be able to stand in front of you as a student and explain to you why I have taken these 12 actions in my financial plan and been able to start tracking and creating this plan based on this project. Uh, so it is truly a hope to move past that educational lens and into the application of not just now, but really the rest of your lives.
okay, so as we start the project,
Yes, sir.
we're really just building a portrait of ourselves where we are like right now, or are we looking more towards when we finish college and we're starting our entry level job position at that point in the future? Is it
That is that is a great question, and truly that can be left up to each individual student. They can say, "I'm Jonathan Martin today as 17. I make, seven, $8,000 doing odd and end jobs throughout the year." They can say, "I'm Jonathan Martin in 5 years that works at Microsoft or wherever they want to go work. I make a lot of money. Let's say I make $280,000 a year." Which sounds fun. We've had many students in the past say, "Oh, well, I'm going to be an NFL player and I'm going to make $1 million a year." Awesome. Come the tax chapter, you're going to have a little bit more work to do, but that is a possibility. Or you can say, "Hey, this time next year, I expect to be working as some kind of trade and I'm going to make $82,000, $52,000, $22,000." The student, we want them to see how this translates to any amount of money. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million, $100,000, or $1,000. We want you to see that there is a plan to be created based on your life. And as we started in the income chapter, this whole curriculum revolves around a desired lifestyle that you have for yourself. So I would love to see a student say, today I'm working, an online job, or I have a job at a local Starbucks that is paying me $15,000. These are the accounts I need. This is the card I use. This is what I'm doing with it. Or to see a student say, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a dentist or a doctor of some sort, and I'm going to end up making $120,000 a year when I'm starting out. We can set up a plan and you may see different advantages as you start to move forward in, okay, well, maybe in the insurance chapter, I am comfortable covering a higher deductible, because I have a little bit more cash flow. So your plan is going to really continue to customize back to how much am I making? What am I doing? And where am I living? As we all know, there are places in Louisiana that are very expensive and places that are not so expensive. If you want to move to the outskirts of a town in Texas or Oklahoma, you can get a lower cost of life. If you want to live in Hollywood or New York City, that's a very high cost of life. So again, it is going to be fluid and customizable to that individual student.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Excellent.
Um, does we I gave the students an assignment to kind of think about some questions for you.
Excellent.
We're working in we've been through chapter 1, 2, and we're just finishing up chapter 2.
All right.
So did anybody have any questions for Mr. Collins? Bennett,
When did you start saving money?
at what point did you start saving?
That's a great question. I would honestly say about 6 months into the NFL. Um, if you saw my kind of origin story, this curriculum began in my head in 2008 when I got my first paychecks from the NFL and spent every dime of it. You're about to enter chapter 3 or cash management. You just are wrapping up chapter 2, time value of money. What type of or was I? I was a spendor. I made money, I spent money. That's the only relationship I knew about it. Um, and it was with that first paycheck that I took it and I spent it all on an engagement ring, and she's still with me. So that's a good investment, bad habit. Um, that I really started to ask myself, well, how do wealthy people, how do these other people look and see and understand about money? So it wasn't until probably 21, 22 years old that I started to say, okay, I'm going to want to buy a house. I'm going to want to buy a car. I'm going to want to do things in 3 months, 6 months, and a year that I don't have the cash or the money sitting in an account today. All right, I'm going to start saving up for those big items. And I started to protect my money from risk and put it into specific accounts. At the time, I went and got my first CD, certificate of deposit. Today, CDs and high yield savings accounts are very common, but they allow you to say, I'm going to fight off inflation. I'm going to earn a little bit of interest, but I'm not taking on any risks. So it really wasn't until my rookie year in the NFL that I had a consistent income. And that's when I started to say, I'm not going to spend every paycheck that comes in. I'm going to start speaking and learning this language of money and started saving. And then by the end of that year, beginning of my second year in the NFL, I actually started to invest. And that's been obviously a life-changing kind of decision, but one that why we're teaching students saving is a vital, important first step of a journey. If we don't get to that investment piece, we're still not achieving success for us at Money Vehicle. We have to be able to see each paycheck. And that's why I loved starting with this character project. A lot of students say, oh, I'm only making $2,000 right now or $20,000 right now. It's not worth saving or even investing yet. When in reality, we need to look at every amount of money, $1,000, and start to break it up into different jobs. What do I want to tell those dollars, even if it's $100? How can I tell it to go start working for me? $100, how can I remove it from risk, get it into a savings account, have it start working for me in a different environment? So it's been a journey for me, but truly my whole plan and whole idea around this started when I was, around your age, because nobody was speaking about this, nobody was teaching this, and nobody was giving me direction, which is why I kind of had to learn it by making some mistakes. But great question.
Somebody else? Paul.
How did you become financially literate?
Great question. So I originally began by going to a bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and I walked down the personal finance aisle. Um, and my first book I picked up was by a guy named Jim Cramer, who is still on television. and it was about how to evaluate stocks. And I just was blown away. One, I didn't really know what a stock was. Two, I didn't know you could actually become an owner of a company. And he started laying out, the difference between buying Coca-Cola and Alcoa, which was an aluminum company, uh, and started to show you how to evaluate this. And it was kind of one of these environments where it was like walking into Home Depot for some people. I walk into Home Depot and I just look around and I'm totally lost. And every aisle shows me a new avenue of things that I don't understand about what Home Depot does. Uh, Walking into the personal finance area was kind of like this. Every book was a whole new aisle of like, wow, I had no idea about any of this. Uh, and so I picked up Jim Cramer. Then I moved to Dave Ramsey, who is still in and around today. I've come to disagree with some of his fundamental principles, but has impacted and empowered millions of people. Susie Orman was a very famous female author and financial expert. And then I got to a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which we talked a little bit about in the income chapter. And Rich Dad Poor Dad was the first one that said, Jim Cramer, Susie Orman, all these people were telling me how smart they were in kind of these higher level concepts of money. Rich Dad Poor Dad was the simplified. I'm talking to you as a novice, as a beginner. I want you to walk into this new world of money with a little bit simpler of a path inward. And it was the one that changed my mindset. And I ended Rich Dad Poor Dad and I thought, wow, what if there was a book that his goal in Rich Dad Poor Dad was to change the way you think and see money. He wanted you to become an investor, which is what you were starting to understand. But I said, what if there was a simple book that walked you into the first actions of creating a financial plan, actually built that plan with you and for you? And so that is where kind of the money vehicle thought was simplified like Rich Dad Poor Dad, but more in depth in different topics. You ask your friends, your parents, you're going to start learning about insurance and taxes and credit. These are complex concepts and ideas that a lot of adults don't understand today. But Money Vehicle is trying to make it that Rich Dad Poor Dad simple idea so you can get the beginning. If you get step one, then we can get to step two and step three and beyond. Uh, but as I was going down this path, I was in the N, and this was while I was in the NFL. I was doing it out of fear. I was scared. Everybody knows the statistics. One, I wasn't going to have a long career. I was a fullback, so I was going to make good money, but not crazy good money. And I knew my journey was going to end really quickly. And so I was scared financially. I was not going to capture the dream. I wasn't going to say the NFL allowed me to get a head start. And so I went into those bookstores terrified, saying, I'm going to get the headaches. I want to make sure to get the dollars too. And it was in that second year that I mentioned I became an investor. A mentor of mine challenged me around this idea of a certified financial planner. And he was a CFP. And he said, Jed, keep asking me questions. I love these conversations and I love that you're learning. But I can give you fish all day long. If you really want to understand, you got to teach yourself how to fish. And so, in the end of my second year through my seventh season, I was studying to be a CFP each off season. And a lot of people give me credit for that and say, oh, that's amazing, blah, blah, blah. In the football off seasons, you got to go lift weights and do some things. You got a lot of spare time. There are people today who are full-time financial professionals and studying for the CFP. That's a crazy endeavor. But as I left football, I was finished with the education and had passed all my CFP exams. And so I got to walk directly out of the NFL into wealth management, no longer as a student, now beginning to be an expert. And very quickly after that, I wanted to go from CFP expert to educator. And that's when I really started to get out to more and more classes and say, that's great that I understand more now. How do we get the next room full or the next student to understand more?
Quick question, and this is just for my own curiosity.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever read the book The Richest Man in Babylon,
Absolutely.
Jason?
And
We
that is,
we
go
started
ahead.
with that. We
Excellent.
started.
Well, off the top of my head, one of the concepts I remember from that book is the 10%. Always making sure a percentage of your paycheck is going to work and going to do something, and really making a focused priority around your future. And you'll see these themes. Money vehicle is not creating new financial principles. We're not trying to say this is the new compound interest idea. Many of our teachings and our philosophies have been around quite a while. What to teach is not always the hurdle. States now are coming out with these standards of, hey, here are the things of what to teach. What Money Vehicle is trying to do is take what and make the how. How are we teaching this more approachable, more understandable, and altogether just more engaging? And then the why comes back to that character project and that capstone of saying, okay, what to teach is compound interest. How to teach it is the type of or are you, spend or, save or, invest or. That simplifies it and makes me understand how I'm looking at money. Why am I doing this? Well, my character is going to put $100 every month away because they want to be a millionaire by age 50 and put it into. So we're trying to connect those concepts and ideas. Richest Man in Babylon, phenomenal book. There are excellent books out there, but we really come back to this understanding of how many students out of 100 are reading. Not a, maybe half of students read. Okay, well, how do we get to the other half? We need the videos. And if we're reading and we're watching videos, well, how are you remembering? Most people remember stories better than they remember facts. So we got to play into that story analogy and idea. And so we're trying to change the how and the why of financial education, and then sprinkle in some coolness where, hey, we're partnered with the Saints, or hey, here's a video of Malcolm Jenkins or Marcus Colston. Again, continuing to look at you all as the student and say, how do we get them more interested? That's where Money Vehicle is trying to change financial literacy, is really focusing on getting the student to where we are and then building that plan from that place.
Great. Anybody else have another question? Selwyn.
What's like the most common obstacle one could face trying to reach the goals?
So talking about obstacles, what is a common obstacle to financial literacy?
I would say a few of them. Number one, many students not believing they need to start a plan because they're not making enough money. Oh, I only made $300 working, last month. Well, why do I need a financial plan? Again, you start with $5 today. And if you can get a plan going and putting those $5 to work for you, you immediately have your first employee. And as you learned about in compound interest, every time that employee goes to work, it's going to create more employees. So it's the hardest thing is to get started. Once you get started, you start to see that the discipline and the structure is not restrictive. It's actually freeing. What I love about my money buckets today that you're going to learn about in chapter 3 here shortly is when I get to the end of my paycheck and there's money left over, I go and spend it. I tell myself, spend and use these dollars because I've already bucketed and I've already put the other jobs to work. These are meant to be spent. So I get to do it with that freedom. But as we know, the biggest hurdle today is community and culture and being the first to change. As I was telling you, my mother, my father, neither spoke money. Even today, I would consider both of them somewhat financially illiterate. And believe me, I'm the fourth of 5 kids. Nobody in my family wants to hear from the baby about what I do today. But I really look at the challenge I had because I had nobody that I trusted in my family to turn and talk to. The massive shift here is we talk about subjects like the credit cards. We talk about subjects like loans, payday loans. We talk about subjects like stock market and investing. And we've had so many beliefs and misbeliefs around these topics of money. The biggest hurdle is getting students like you today to connect to these worlds that was the wealthy foreign, don't speak it, don't understand it of the past, to these are concepts you can understand, and these are concepts that you can use to your advantage. And breaking free from nobody in my family has done this before, I have to be the first to start making these decisions. And I think for students today, that has been the biggest hurdle. Getting the education, you can get the education now. TikTok, YouTube. I watch, TikTok videos and YouTube videos that teach me amazing things. Honestly, if I want to learn about a new subject, I go and get it from the experts, but then I also go and get it from a YouTube video of, well, how are they saying or speaking or talking about it differently? But as you look at this journey you have just begun, students think, I don't have enough, or, oh, nobody in my family has done that. Once you see it and say, here's $1,000, I'm going to build a plan around. This plan is for Jed today. This plan is for Jed in a year. This plan is for Jed in 40 or 50 years. But let's not talk or focus about that person too much because it is too far off in the distance. I do want you to connect to whoever you are today. You are going to be that person in a week, a month, and 1 year from today. And if you're not looking at that individual, nobody else is. And so I really think that hurdle of connecting how vital this information is with the rest of your life, ask anybody. And this is not to credit Money Vehicle, and it's not to discredit anything else. The one life skill I guarantee you all have, regardless of what job you go and get, the one thing you're all going to have to handle and deal with is a paycheck. There might be other things, but I promise you a paycheck is going to be something that comes in your future that you say, well, what about that health insurance? What about these taxes? Can I put it in something that is not going to be taxed and still grow tax advantaged accounts? Now that you're speaking the language, you start to see how all these pieces fall into your puzzle. And so why we added and included those family conversations is I would challenge many of you students, bring some of these questions home, bring these topics home. This is not a class that your parents took in high school. This is not a class they took in college or have since. They've taken it in the school of hard knocks where they're getting paychecks and having to figure this stuff out. But having these questions, breaking through some of the misunderstandings or just some of the lack of interest in a lot of these topics. How can you bring this conversation around money into your house or into your community and make that starting change by saying, okay, I'm going to be the one that starts to learn the language. You're going to be the Jedediah. My brother's, one's an engineer, one's a lawyer. My brother was at Harvard Law School. He started asking the big dumb jock in the NFL about money. Why? It's a different language. This is not a smart, not smart thing. This is I was fortunate to have someone or a place teach me this language, or I simply had nobody ever teach me the language. Somebody walked into your class and said, hey, start speaking start speaking Spanish. People who speak Spanish will stand up and go, okay, yeah, that's easy. If you've never been taught Spanish, it's going to be really hard. Money is no different. That is the big hurdle. How can you be the first in your family or the first in your world to start connecting the concepts of money to who you are? Because the access from your phone, you can invest in anything you want in the world today with a simple swipe of your thumb. That is power. Can you use it? Do you know how to use that power? That's what this class is all about.
That's an excellent point. Like dealing with the fear of learning something you don't know that's really important that you're gonna need to use on a daily basis in your regular life.
So
there was one other question that we thought of, and it's when you talked about spendor, savor, and investor. Obviously, you're not going to spend your whole time in investor mode, and
no.
you're not going to try not to spend your whole time in spender mode. How do we kind of get a concept of maintaining a balance between those things, and when you're thinking investor mode, and then okay, so now I'm in spender mode.
Yes, sir. So, first, that is chapter three. That is right where you are heading. We're going to go into this concept of your money buckets. So, we wanted you to see the time value of money, compound interest. We wanted you to see why you're going to start to be in investor mode. But, Mr. Martin, you're absolutely right. If all we did was land in investor mode, there would be no enjoyment of today. There would be a miss of a lot of different areas and buckets. So, we're going to start to break down that paycheck by percentages. You're going to start with your society choice, which we call taxes. And you'll see why we call it society is because we want you to have a positive frame around where those dollars are going. Then you're going to go to your past choices, your debts, your bills, your responsibilities, your present choices, what you're living on today, daily. What are you going to eat? What are you going to go clothe yourself with? Then we get into future, and your future is going to divide into that saving and investing, very different and very specific jobs. Do I want to protect or do I want to put my dollars at risk? And the last one, a lot of people overlook this and say, I'm not going to do that one yet. We call it your compassion choice. And so it really starts to identify money you're going to spend outside of yourself. Everybody says, well, okay, I'm not going to give to charity just yet. I only made $1,000. We start with a low percentage, but beyond charity, think about birthdays, think about holidays, think about Mother's Day. I want to go buy my mom something for $20. Great, but you got to put that into your bucket and into your system. So as you start to balance out, now that you have these different mindsets, a spendor, I want to enjoy today. We all are going to be spenders. I'm not discrediting spending, but I do realize one day I'm going to want a car. And that is beyond today. That is something I want in 6 months or a year. Maybe it's 2 years, but I do want to start protecting my money for this. And then I do want to start seeing my money go to work for me. I love employer money. And so as you balance that out, that is all going to come together. Chapter three, as you measure your opportunity costs with each paycheck, you start to build these habits in these systems. And then you go into your 5 choices of your money buckets. And what's really neat is as you start to make these decisions, I know I want to be an investor. I know I have my 5 money buckets. We're even going to take that next step in chapter 4 and start to look at what accounts you can set up to automate some of those choices. I don't want to think every time I make $1,000 that I'm going to have to pay taxes or that I'm going to have to put into my future. You can do it automatically as you build this system and you start speaking the language. You can identify these are the actions I want to take, and this is where my money is going to start going. So I love the introduction to the spendors, save or investor mindset. But let's go back one step to that chapter 1, rich goals. Why are you going to go from spender to saver to investor and back to spender is all going to be around that rich goal. This is how you customize your plan. If your goal is in the next year to save and make and invest $100,000 or $1,000,000, that's a different goal than the person sitting next to you who says, I'm going to try to save my first $1,000. That's my goal this year. Is $100 a month. I'm going to get my first $1,000. You have to look at what goal you are setting, not what goal the person next to you or Mr. Martin or anybody else. This is your money. This is your goal and your journey. That is why we started with your idea of setting a goal, setting a landmark, beginning with how to get there is going to be using and putting money to work for you. And now chapter 3, you're going to start cutting up and dividing that paycheck into giving it different jobs each and every day. And really, it's going to start with this first paycheck. I get to tomorrow fly to Atlanta. I'm going to talk to 150 NFL players. I got to talk to NBA players last week, National Women's Soccer League. It doesn't matter the paycheck. NBA players make even more money than NFL players. I walk in there and I start to show them, great, 1 million, 5 million. It's going to break into these 5 buckets. You have more money being thrown into these buckets, but everybody has the same 5 choices with every paycheck. And that's the power that you're going to be able to look at and say, all right, cool. I just got my first 1,000. Now I'm making 10,000. Now it's 100,000. I don't care how much the paycheck is. I know the choices that I have to go make for each check. And that's just speaking the language, building your habits, and building this plan. And then you're going to look at your character's paycheck and say, my character is now making $100,000. I love that. That's awesome. How much is going to go to society or taxes? How much is going to get to be given in compassion? How much is going to be put towards their future and saving and investing? How much am I going to live on today? You get to walk through those choices based on every paycheck. And the beauty, again, not restrictive, it's freeing when you look at it and say, great, I got $5,000 to go spend this month. Amazing. I got $500 to go spend this month. I can do that without guilt, without any restraint, because my system is in place.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Our bell is about to ring. We're about to change classes, but thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. That you gave us a lot of information, a lot of really great things to think about.
Mr. Martin, it is a pleasure. Thank you all for enjoying, and please welcome feedback. Create these characters. I'd love to see some of the characters you create. Enjoy the rest of your journey in Money Vehicle, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
See ya.